Beauty is skin deep. Beauty lies in the eyes of the beholder. Don't judge a book by its cover. How many times have you heard those statements, ladies and gentlemen? It's my contention that our modern culture today sends mixed messages about beauty and really causes cultural confusion. What I'd like to do today is open your eyes so that on one hand, we may be obsessed with posting the latest selfie that is flawless, perhaps that has been airbrushed. But on the other hand, we cannot tell our neighbor's newly born child that that child is hideous. You know, on one hand, we see TV anchors trying to outdo themselves when it comes to matters of looking glamorous on TV. But we cannot say that we didn't hire that person because we didn't like the way that they look. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to set you free. I would like you to look at beauty as the pursuit of excellence, which is a human endeavor. I would like you to look at beauty as a survival instinct. So let me start. I want to share some hard truths with you, or as I like to call it, the beautiful truth. You know that more attractive people are seen as more intelligent, they're seen as friendlier, they're seen as more creative. In fact, they're also seen as more honest. This is called the beauty premium. We assign certain values to a person simply based on the way that they look. And the less attractive are seen as unfriendlier, in certain cases, not even as intelligent, perhaps not even as credible. Ladies and gentlemen, this is called the ugly penalty. There is a beauty premium. In fact, when we look at beauty, it is my contention that this starts from the earliest that we're born. Did you know that babies that are more attractive are held more? They are cuddled more? They receive more smiles? In a famous supermarket study, toddlers were allowed to roam unattended in a supermarket. And the less attractive children were allowed to roam further away unattended than their counterparts. In fact, as we go into school, more attractive children receive more attention, a greater response to their problems. And even in college and university, students who are considered more attractive receive better grades. Yes, that is the true bell curve when it comes to marking. And professors who are less attractive are deemed not as good in terms of their teaching ability. Ladies and gentlemen, let's look at the workplace. Did you know that over the course of one's career, if you are deemed as more attractive, you will make, on average, 20,000 shillings more per year. Publicly traded companies who have CEOs who are considered more attractive have their shares trading at a higher price. A higher price than those companies who have CEOs who are deemed less attractive. Let's look at relationships. I mean, there are no two ways about it. The more attractive you are, the more dates you go on. In fact, more attractive people are 6 times more likely to be married than their less attractive counterparts. The justice system. Those who are less attractive receive higher penalties. The more attractive, lenient sentences. And even in civil cases, the more attractive will receive a higher compensation. Let's look at films, movies, TV, entertainment. The hero or the heroine is always the most attractive, is always the good-looking leading man, whereas the villain will always have some sort of deformity or will be less attractive. In music, studies have shown that the more attractive you are, the better rated your music is. In fact, more attractive musicians have more hit singles than their less attractive counterparts. In fact, there is something called the ugliness penalty. There's an article up there that refers to how legislation needs to be enacted to protect the homely. The same way that there's legislation to protect discrimination against gender discrimination, against racial discrimination, this article proposes that there needs to be enacted legislation to protect those who are not as attractive. At this point, you're probably thinking to yourself, all right, Derek, there may be a kernel of truth to what you're saying, but isn't beauty subjective? Isn't one man or one woman's meat somebody else's poison? Well, actually not. Immanuel Kant, the German philosopher, said that our looking at someone beautiful is universal and has nothing to do with subjective tendencies. There is a template in our minds that automatically recognizes beauty. In other words, it's inborn. It's instinctive. We're born with recognizing beauty. So what do we look for? Well, symmetry is one of the things that the brain is automatically looking for when it considers someone beautiful. Symmetry, of course, is the balance of proportion of the features on somebody's face. It could be one half in relation to the other. In fact, symmetry is considered a sign of a healthy individual. Let's look at men. Ladies, when you are looking at a man and you consider him attractive, in most cultures, it's a man who has a strong chin, you know, the leading man's jaw. They may have well-defined cheekbones. They've got a strong brow. That's a truly masculine face. That is what women look for in a man. And they consider that attractive because that is a sign that that man has high levels of testosterone and can protect the female in terms of if there is some misadventure. Ladies, how do you like your men? Tall, dark, and handsome? That's not just a cliche. That's deeply embedded in the female psyche. We are hardwired, or women are hardwired, to respond to men who are taller. That's because taller men had an advantage in any confrontation. And again, that is what women are looking for, somebody who can protect them and protect their offspring. When we're looking at women, what do men find attractive? Well, there are a couple of things. Clear, smooth skin, big, clear eyes, full lips. These are all deemed attractive across all cultures. In fact, there are certain cultures that will look at a woman, and if she's fuller figured or rounder, they will consider her more attractive. Some cultures will look at women who are thinner and look at that as attractive. But in all those cases, what men are instinctively drawn to is a woman who has a waist to hip ratio of 0.7. That's called the hourglass figure. And that's what men are instinctively drawn to. Now, men don't walk around saying, I'm looking for a woman who has clear skin and who has a waist-to-hip ratio of 0.7, but it's instinctive. In fact, there's a part of the brain that is stimulated when they see a woman who has that particular characteristic. And it's the same part of the brain that is stimulated when men are engaged in thrill-seeking behavior, like gambling or whitewater rafting. In other words, they can't help themselves. It is direct stimulation and positive stimulation at that. Leonardo da Vinci, in the 15th century, Leonardo da Vinci is, of course, the famous Italian artist and thinker, came up with a drawing, a masterpiece that is studied even today. It's called the Vitruvian Man. This is a picture of a man who has perfect proportions. And when women are looking at a man and they find a man attractive, they are also instinctively looking for a man who has these proportions. For example, the relationship of the size of a man's shoulders in relationship to his waist. That's the upside-down V shape that women are looking for. And again, it signifies that that's a man who is full of health, has an immune system that's working, and perhaps even fertile and healthier. You know, we are born with the ability to recognize faces at birth. It's an instinct. Babies are born and they immediately can tell their mother's face. However, man-made objects, that is learned. We have to learn to recognize man-made objects. Did you know that when we are looking at an object or a face that has some kind of distortion, there's a particular part of the brain that is activated. It's called the amygdala. And what happens is the amygdala is activated and stimulated, and this is the same part of the brain that is activated when we look at something that is either fearful or disgusting. In fact, the motor cortex is also fired up, and the motor cortex is in place to protect us. It's a self-defense mechanism. Repeated exposure to a distorted object. The motor cortex is fired up, the amygdala is fired up, and that activation over time with repeated exposure actually diminishes. However, repeated exposure to a distorted face over time, the amygdala is still as active the first time as it was the last time. In other words, we can adapt to a violation in the beauty of an object, but we cannot adapt to the violation in the beauty of man or a face. At this point, I'm sure you're thinking to yourself, well, Derek, okay, well, fine. I think I'm sitting pretty, so to speak, but also, is there any hope for me? Well, let me share with you 3 things. Number 1, research has shown that in terms of attractiveness, we look for averageness. We look for average faces, and we find those most attractive. So scientists did an experiment, a study. They got average pictures of people. They took a sample of the population, and they went in the lab and they composed a composite image and came up with an average face. And they did that several times. And they showed these to participants. And over again, participants rated those average faces as most attractive. And their conclusion was, we are looking for perhaps greater genetic diversity. And that's why an average face is what we would consider attractive. Here's a second thing. people that we are familiar with are most attractive to us. In fact, the people we love are 20% more familiar to us. And the final thing, ladies and gentlemen, is as I was doing the research for this talk, I went online and I found sites that would rate one's attractiveness based on some of the metrics that I discussed. So I went onto a site called prettyskill.com and I uploaded my picture, and it took about 3 minutes, and it scanned my face, and it came up with the results. And I'm happy to tell you that my rating was 58 out of 100, which the site called not too bad. And then it named everything that was not working with my face. Ladies and gentlemen, I want you to fight these cultural influences that tell you to ignore beauty. As I've demonstrated, beauty is built in us. We can't help but recognize it. In fact, beauty is what women look for in a man for protection. It's what a man looks for in a woman to help with procreation. And I'd like to end with a quote by poet John Keats. And this is what he said: "Beauty is truth, and truth is beauty. That is all you need to know on earth, and all you need to remember." Thank you very much.